Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two-Way Tonight. Mark Halperin will be with us in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Halperin, thank you for joining. Grateful to have you here. We got a lot to get through tonight because President Trump had what we call in the news dodge a wide-ranging press conference today at Mar-a-Lago, where he was there with the CEO of SoftBank to announce a major SoftBank investment in the U.S. During the press conference, President Trump half jokingly, maybe a quarter jokingly, asked the CEO to increase it from 100 billion to 200 billion. But expect more of this in Asia, particularly in Japan and South Korea. There is Trump worry. They're worried about the tariffs. They're worried about what might happen in the U.S. economy and the America First agenda. And so there's a lot of eagerness to figure out what's going on in the U.S. and to do things like what SoftBank did today to be integrated into the American economy for the next 4 years. So there was a horrible school shooting in Wisconsin, not a ton known yet about motive or assailant, but we'll keep you posted on that. But as I said, the major news today it relates to about a dozen or more topics that President Trump discussed at the press conference. We're going to bring in our two guests, show you some clips, talk about them, and then take your questions. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, we'd love for you to be part of it, or react to all of the things the president-elect said, or anything else on your mind for our guests and for me. So please raise your electronic hand and become part of the conversation, whether you're watching on Two-Way or on YouTube or on X. As always, peace, love, and understanding here. We're not about hate. We're about understanding and peace and love, particularly in this season of all seasons. So if you decide you want to write in the chat, write something piquant, argumentative, challenging, but not smack. Don't talk smack about others, and these personal attacks make me queasy. So don't do that. And that goes for the chat here too. So with that, before we go to our cavalcade of Trump clips, let's bring in our guests. Two folks familiar to the Two-Way audience because they've been here before, but I don't believe they've ever been here at the same time. And that could be fun. Welcome in. Welcome in, Trisha McLaughlin and Kristen Davison. Have you guys ever been on something together?
No, this is
No,
first.
no. Have you ever worked on the same campaign, either for the same client or against?
No,
No,
not yet.
no. Are you familiar with each other's oeuvres?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we love having you both on. You're both great. You're both great guests, and you both are realistic about everything, including about Donald Trump, both of whom you tried to defeat on behalf of your clients in the last election. But both of whom, I believe I can speak for you, who earned a deep appreciation for the folks at Mar-a-Lago and for their candidate Horse, who's a pretty good candidate. So glad to have you both here. Let's just start before we go to the videotape, as Warner Wolf said. Kristen, you first. How's the transition going from your point of view? What's going well? What's maybe not going so well from your point of view?
I think they're doing a terrific job. I think if you look back, it's hard to compare 2016 to today. It's just totally different circumstances, but it really is, I think a very disciplined, very goal-oriented transition. You see they're pushing messages. They are standing by their nominations and being very tactical and strategic, with rolling each one out. I think, I think they're doing a great job. If there was one thing, they could do a little bit more is probably put some of these nominees out around messaging events themselves, just get some extra juice out of it. But it's, that's just more of a personal preference. I don't see any huge errors being made. I think President Trump's conference today was, the perfect amount for him to be out there talking about these different initiatives. I think they're being very strategic on when he's out and speaking and when he's not. And so I think today was a successful day for the Trump transition, and I anticipate that we'll continue to see strategic, Trump press conferences and announcements along the way.
Kristen, thank you. And again, so grateful to you for spending this time with us. So generous of you. Trisha, how would you say what's going well, what's not in the transition?
Yeah, I agree with that analysis. I think what is absolutely going well is this tone shift we're seeing from Donald Trump. It's probably the most disciplined we've ever seen him. And I think part of that is 2016. It's almost hard to remember, but there was such a cloud of that Russian collusion conspiracy theory that was really hanging over everyone, whether it was Republicans or Democrats, like, is this a legitimate president? And he no longer has that. He also has the mandate, which I think gives him a whole different level of confidence. And I also think that's driven some of these tech titans out to kind of come kiss the ring. And I think in general, he's very focused on his legacy. You're seeing more of a statesman, I think, than we've seen in the past 8 to 10 years. I think overall it's really going well. I'm glad to see some of these nominees like Pete Hegseth start to hit back. Mark, you've covered that so well, how he really turned that candidacy around, or that nomination around. I would love to see more of JD Vance. I think he's such an effective surrogate, but so far, I mean, I think 10 out of 10 as far as discipline.
Yeah, a couple things, then we're going to go to the videotape. First of all, thank you for your nice words. Thank you also for being here. Historically, nominees, once they're named, once the president-elect announces the intention to nominate someone, the rule out of deference to advise and consent was no interviews, right? And so, Kristen, you said you'd like to see people out more. The reality is, Hegseth has shown, as long as you pay verbal homage to advise and consent, as long as you say how much you love your Senate courtesy calls and how great the Senate is and how important advise and consent is, apparently now you can go out and do interviews. And so I'll be curious to see if any of these other folks reach a problem situation, whether they choose to follow that path as well. And of course, you see people like Tom Homan, who's not subject to Senate confirmation. They're not only out talking to the press, they're out having meetings, and the National Security Advisor, same thing. The other thing I'd say is, and this is either a brilliant insight or the most mundane thing I could possibly say, but, or maybe neither. Donald Trump is not a normal second term president because he had 4 years to think about it and to do other stuff, as you pointed out, not encumbered by challenges to his legitimacy as he was 4 years ago, 8 years ago, right? 8 years ago. Yeah, 8 years ago. And yet, with all this experience and, as you said, Tricia, the validation of having been reelected, like if you're an incumbent and you get reelected, it's not as much validation as what he just did, right? Won the popular vote, won all 7 battleground states. This is in some ways a much stronger second term than a normal second term, and a bunch of people who aren't nearly as tired, right? You go into a normal second term, you got a bunch of cabinet secretaries who stick around, but they're tired, and the White House staff, same thing. This is like a bunch of fresh new people, and these Silicon Valley people who've never worked in government, they couldn't be fresher. They're all fired up and ready to go. So that's my either insight or couldn't be more obvious point. But I think you see that in the president-elect himself, who by every account all three of us get is in like a fantastic mood, super excited. But we've seen now both today in his tone at the press conference and in his Meet the Press interview, this is like some other guy impersonating Donald Trump. He's calm, he's thoughtful. Did I just say it? He's thoughtful. And clearly, like, this is a playbook. This is not some accident. This is a turtle on a fence post. Who's ever talking to him about a comm strategy couldn't be more different than some versions we've seen. And I'm going to start with what I think is one of the more interesting human subplots here. For the last 4 or 5 days, it's looked like, or maybe longer, Team Trump has tried to box Ron DeSantis in or box him out, depending on what metaphor you want, basically saying, well, Laura Trump wants the job and she's not going to be reappointed to the RNC, and people are saying how great it would be if she got it. And my DeSantis sources were all saying she's not getting it. He's not going to pick her. He's going to pick someone from Florida who's really from Florida, who's been in elective office. And it seemed like it was, leaving the defense secretary thing aside, it seemed like it was uncomfortable. Kristen worked for Governor DeSantis's operation in the campaign. This is a surprising answer and a kind of a game-changing answer from Donald Trump today when it was asked about the possibility that Ron DeSantis would pick Laura Trump for the Rubio seat. Roll tape.
Mr. President.
Yes, please.
Do you expect Ron DeSantis to appoint Laura Trump to Senator Marco Rubio's seat?
No, I don't. I probably don't, but I don't know. Ron's doing a good job. That's his choice, nothing to do with me. Laura's unbelievable. I mean, she was incredible. The job she did at the RNC as chairman, along with Michael Whatley, the combination, but I can just speak for Laura. She is so highly respected. by women. I mean, even her workout routines are through the roof. She lifts 150 pounds. I don't know how the hell she does it. She's a bad example for men and women sports. Because I wouldn't be able to beat her, I don't believe. I'd try like hell. But,
all right,
no,
that's enough.
Incredible woman. And
so he praised Ron DeSantis like right at the top, and uncharacteristically said, "Not my decision." Kristen, start with you. What do you think of that answer in the context of what we've seen in the last few days, which is, again, seemed like Team Trump was kind of trying to force the issue?
I think it was a perfect answer from President Trump. It reminds me when we were having the leadership races for the majority leader in the Senate. You saw so much, online pushing Senator Rick Scott, other folks, and President Trump wisely stayed out of the entire, respected the institution and the choices of the senators that they need to make. And I think that was smart to do. Similarly, you see him, praising Governor DeSantis and acknowledging that it is his decision to make, but also highlighting the positive attributes of Laura Trump. And so I think it's smart. I think it's a different tone that we're seeing from President Trump. I don't know if he would have said the same thing back in 2016 or, had he won in 2020, but I think it's the smart move because it, kind of gets the best of both. It acknowledges that it's the governor's decision. And it also softly encourages Laura Trump for the pick.
Yeah, and Tricia gives Governor DeSantis kind of room to not feel like it's a confrontation, right? If he doesn't want to pick her.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, Tricia, go ahead.
I think it's savvy, and he's also not setting him up to be, zero-sum game as far as if he doesn't pick her, then it's not a loss for Trump. That being said, I think in this situation, Ron DeSantis does need to either choose Laura Trump or somebody who's super MAGA, because if he is planning on running into 2028, and that likely will be against J.D. Vance and a swath of other MAGA Republicans, then he needs to kind of shore back up that base, which a lot of those folks, he lost them as fans during the primary. And I think he's starting to chip away and get people back as far as that core MAGA base. But he's got to give Trump a little bit of a carrot, or at least that loyalist base.
Okay. We could talk about this, but let's move on. So I don't know if you guys are obsessed, as many people are. I'm not, with the drone story. But of course, President Trump got a drone question today. So let's look at that number 2, please.
good to see you.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey and ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows, and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth? They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Have you been
Do you have any reason to think they're...
All right. The first answer, any comms director would say, great first answer, the one on Laura Bush. Tricia, what would a comms director say about that answer?
I mean, he clearly, I think he's seen a briefing. That was kind of clear to me. But what struck me more than even this was Mayorkas's ABC interview, where he said, we haven't seen anything unusual. Well, in that there was no threat, nothing nefarious. Well, of course we've seen something unusual. We've seen it with our own eyes. And I think that's what's really frustrating the American people, is we've seen, whether it be COVID-19 origin, or inflation being transitory, or Joe Biden's cognitive decline, it's over and over again, don't believe your lying eyes, when we've seen it ourselves. So, I mean, I think Trump is just kind of, he's a populist at his core, and he's saying what the American people are saying. That's something else. You need to trust the people.
Kristen, the dog that didn't bark for me in that answer was, he did not attack Sleepy Joe, right? He made a reference to the president knowing, but he could, like the normal mode of Donald Trump, he would attack Biden. And there's obviously some mileage in that. What's from your point of view the pros and cons of laying off Joe Biden?
Yeah, well, I have spent way too much time going down rabbit holes on the internet on this. I'm like so bought in and tracking. We won't spend this time on it because we could spend a whole hour on it. But what struck me most is that Trump hasn't come out and hit Biden or demanded or hypothesized on what it could be.
Yeah.
So to Trisha's point, I think maybe he has read a briefing or knows a little bit and knows not to say anything, because that was the biggest question to me. Normally you'd expect Trump to say this is X or this is Y, or Biden needs to go strike these down. And the fact that he's not saying that, I think strikes even more questions. I do think it was a very reserved answer from Trump, but he is saying what people are thinking, that this isn't normal, and we can pretend that there are drones in the sky and nothing is happening, but he's saying what we're all thinking, that we need to know what it is. And the fact that he didn't, kind of give his own theory to it, he's either being very cautious and very respectful of, national security and what could be going on, or, he's read something to the effect that he, has seen it and doesn't want to, be the one to give the news.
Kristen,
One
what's
thing
your
to add.
so go ahead, you go.
I was a little bit surprised he didn't bring up the Chinese spy balloon in 2023, just because
Yeah.
I think for many of us, that's immediately what comes to mind.
Yeah.
And if there was some sort of parallel there that he has read that is in his intelligence briefing, I think he might have mentioned it.
Kristen, do you have a theory about the drones?
Oh, goodness. I feel like your chat will go off if I really go into all the theories, but I've read all of them, that they're ours, and that, there's a radiation spill and, a number of different things. Until someone gives a concrete answer, I feel like all these theories are gonna, somersault their way into craziness for a little bit.
So you don't have a theory that you like?
The only thing that I, the only theory that I believe is that they are ours and that they're monitoring something. I just don't know if I believe or know what that is.
Okay. Bobby Kennedy on the Hill today starting his courtesy calls. Let's put up number 9, please. And he was asked at some point as he was moving about the Hill, put up number 9. There we go. He was asked as he walked into his first meeting about the polio vaccine, and he says, "I'm all for the polio vaccine." We're not showing you the video because it's a little bit hard to hear, but that's what he said, according to the Fox reporter. "I'm all for the polio vaccine." And here is Donald Trump, number 3, please, earlier than this, asked about Bobby Kennedy, polio vaccine, and other issues. Number 3, please.
Two quick questions. First, on vaccines, do you want RFK Jr. to revoke any vaccines?
No, I want him to come back with a report as to what he thinks. We're going to find out a lot. We're doing 2 things. We're going to have tremendous cost savings will come out of this. That's a minimum. And we're also going to have, and I think, very serious discussions about certain things, whether it's pesticides. Europe doesn't use pesticides, and yet they have a better mortality rate than we do. They don't use pesticides. In fact, they use it as an excuse not to take our farm product. We spend billions and billions of dollars on pesticides, and something bad's happening. Again, you take a look at autism today versus 20, 25 years ago. It's like not even believable. So we're going to have reports. No, nothing's going to happen very quickly. I think you're going to find that Bobby he's a very rational guy. I found him to be very rational. No, nothing, you're not going to lose the polio vaccine. That's not going to happen. I saw what happened with the polio. I have friends that were very much affected by that. I have friends from many years ago, and they have, obviously, they're still in not such good shape because of it. And many people died. And the moment they took that vaccine, it ended. Dr. Jonas Salk did a great job, so I don't anticipate that at all.
All right. Do either of you know Bobby Kennedy?
Not well.
No, I do not.
All right. So we're seeing a new disciplined Donald Trump. What do you think the prospects are? We see a new disciplined Bobby Kennedy, both in his confirmation process and if he's confirmed.
Well, judging by that response today, I think he's been given guardrails of where he can go too far and cannot. And I think, voicing support for polio vaccine calms down some people who were a little nervous about his prospect. And when you look at, each nominee has their own hurdle that they have to prepare and jump over. For him, I think it's twofold. Yes, there are, probably more of the Democrats that had concerns about some of his past statements on vaccines, but then you also have some Republicans who have concerns over his abortion stance and his, position on government-run healthcare. And so he can only really lose one of them, right? He can only, go too far on one. And the vaccine one, just given by what he said, and given, even Trump's own record on, investing in research and being smart about, medicine and vaccinations, to me, it sounds like that's going to be the area that he shores up and calms people down on, to really make sure he doesn't lose any of those moderate to, senators that may have otherwise had concerns.
Tricia.
Yeah, I think RFK, his positions have been wildly misreported or misrepresented. He's not anti-vaccine. I think he's been very, very clear about that. He did a great interview with Megyn Kelly. I would encourage people to watch it, even though it's terribly long. But he talks about, he's skeptical of certain vaccines, but he wants them to be available, wants them to be studied. He personally is vaccinated. He vaccinated his children. I think that the great thing about RFK, and I think that people on the right especially appreciate, is the way he's shifted the conversation, especially about our nutrition, but about infertility rates. We had the highest in recorded history, obesity, mental health disorder. And why are we spending billions of dollars annually on HHS when this is the state of our public health? I think that he will be confirmed, and I don't think it'll be particularly close.
I have told people since he announced he was running for president that if he had the discipline to emphasize the issues that bring the country together and have broad populist appeal, he could be an extraordinary force. And I think that's true in the cabinet. If he talks about make America healthy again and just focuses on the areas of agreement, including holding big food accountable, he'd be and big pharma accountable. He'd be a historical figure. And it seems like from what Donald Trump said about him there and what he said about him recently, Donald Trump is all on board for this, even though it was never part of his agenda before he connected to Kennedy. And I think it's potentially extremely powerful. And I think based on people I've talked to, I think you're right. At this point, he will be confirmed. And if he does show the ability to play down some of his more controversial views, then as you said, he may be confirmed quite easily. Someone else who's thought of, along with Pete Hegseth, as the most endangered is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, do you guys know him? Or know her, rather? Do you know Tulsi Gabbard?
Same as
No.
RFK.
No. Okay. So her entry into Donald Trump's orbit is kind of an interesting story that hasn't really been told that I've seen in full. Obviously, she's left the party and she endorsed him, so that's good. But what she stands for, as opposed to what Bobby Kennedy stands for, is not as defined in my mind. People who question her fitness for this job worry about some past statements she's made, and worry. And the extreme end of the worry is that she's like an agent of a foreign power. But the less intense view is she's perhaps insufficiently or overly credulous about foreign dictators and people who are hostile to the United States. I want to show you a video that I don't know when it's from, but Jason Miller, the Trump transition comms director who worked in the campaign, has been putting it out on social. And this shows you a side of Tulsi Gabbard, which accounts for part of her popularity. Roll number 8, please. Trisha will confirm that's not much different than a Pilates class on the Upper West Side. Just some strenuous activity. If you all were helping her with her confirmation, what role, if any, would that video play in trying to get her confirmed?
Well, I mean, I think that they definitely should continue to play up the fact that she's a current reservist, if I'm not mistaken. And you can't hold a security clearance if there is actual knowledge that you have some sort of a foreign allegiance. So I always thought that that line of attack was very stupid, but also the more that they can speak to that and that she is a patriot who's been serving this country for years now, I think that they should continue to do so. And that being said, as when we're talking about Assad and we're talking about these wars abroad, the fact that she's actually served, it gives her more credibility. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd use that video in particular, but there's probably a method. It is very reminiscent of the early RFK videos during his presidential primary.
Yeah, it's more strenuous than playing tennis with your shirt off.
Well,
yeah, as some candidates
more
have done.
tactical.
Yeah. Kristen, do you ever do Pilates at all?
Yeah, well, that reminded me more of a boxing class, right? I feel like it's more like,
all right. If you, if Bobby Kennedy's sort of positives for the job he's going for is standing up for special interests and talking about, health, what are her positives to be confirmed for the job she's up for?
I think the security clearance is probably the biggest one, because the biggest critique of her, has been her past statements and meetings and associations, especially with what's going on in the world right now, causes some heartburn and concern for especially those, more hawkish members of the Senate. She needs to, I don't know if I necessarily lean into a video. I think she needs to really find the right explanation for those meetings. I mean, she has a security clearance, so that is already kind of jumping over the one problem of whether she's a threat or not. But to really go into these hearings and explain the benefit of sitting down and meeting with some of these dictators and individuals from a foreign policy standpoint, not necessarily, the political standpoint, I think will be really crucial for her. I do think out of all the nominees right now, she has one of the bumpier roads. But she also could have the most unique coalition. For example, will Senator Bernie Sanders support her? We always talk about the Republicans and who will defect and who will vote for, but I think she has an opportunity to really have a unique coalition of senators behind her to get her to that magic number, and how many Democrats will actually cross the line to vote for her as well.
All right, we're going to get to your questions in a minute. So please, if you'd like to be part of the conversation, raise your hand and remember to be polite and express profound thoughts, but not meanness. So he named President Trump, working with the vice president-elect, named personnel very quickly, more quickly than usual. And with the exception of Matt Gaetz, things are on track. And I think they've shown, as you both said, kind of a tactical and strategic strength about how to turn the Hegseth thing around, which has given people confidence that they know what they're doing. What else would you say they've accomplished in the transition so far? Besides those things, what else would, if you were talking to a political science class at the University of Iowa, what have they accomplished so far? Kristen?
They have been very almost, repetitive in a good way about what they're going to accomplish first. So you always hear energy and the border. These are the two things that are constantly at the top of every, speech, every surrogate, every news article. They have been very on message and accomplished that here is what we are going to do day one. We are going to focus on energy. We're going to focus on the border, and backing that up with the appointments, with, the surrogates, with, listing out what Trump is going to do the minute he takes office. I think they've been very successful in being very clear and disciplined on what those first objectives will be, because you can have a mandate. The fastest way to lose that mandate and that approval is to not deliver on it. And so I think they're setting themselves up in a very effective way to be prepared in that first week to deliver some major wins, to grow that confidence that the American people have in Trump and the administration right now.
Super interesting. Tricia, same question.
Yeah, agreed. I just think that the discipline is like nothing we've seen from Trump in the last 10 years, not just himself, but the rollout of everything. Of course, mass deportations, illegal immigration being top of mind for Americans, a huge reason why he won. The fact that he named Stephen Miller deputy chief of staff and Tom Homan almost immediately, I think just showed that is the name of the game. It was a little bit later for Scott Bassett, but across the board, he seems like he's going to be pretty easily get confirmed. That might have been a little bit held up because of a squabble between him and Howard Lutnick. I'm not really sure. That's kind of the rumor mill, but I think overall it's been pretty seamless. Even the Matt Gaetz, I mean, he was there for, what was it, 8 days, and then it was in and out. Pam Bondi, that seems like it's going to go very quickly, very smoothly. And honestly, he's kept everybody really in line as far as RFK. He's been on message. Tulsi Gabbard as well. I mean, Pete Hegseth fighting back when he needed to, but I think he took the right amount of time to give deference to those senators. But when it started looking like those rumors were moving out of control and he was really going to lose that nomination, they tackled it well. So I think overall it is showing the order of priorities for this administration.
I think the point you guys are making about message discipline is just so key, and you haven't heard much talk about that, but they really are emphasizing issues that matter to the American people more than you often see in a transition. And they're doing that even with the distractions of some of the personnel stuff. So it's a lot going on. And like during the campaign, they're not bragging about it. They're not out there taking credit for it. You don't see people trying to get profiled as the genius strategists. They're doing the work, as they say, and it's quite effective. And the Democrats continue to not have too many answers. All right, Pat, yeah, go ahead, Tricia, go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought today was, or excuse me, the Army-Navy game over the weekend was very well done. Even just that visual of J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, that is a message to those senators who might be on the cusp of voting.
Yep. Patty, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, if that tree is solar powered, and what's on your mind.
Oh, yes, totally solar powered. No. I'm in a very small town in Michigan, Southwest Michigan. Lived in California for 40 years.
Show me where. There. Okay. You guys know that Michigan thing?
Yep.
Unless they live on the Upper Peninsula when this thing is rendered useless. All right. What's the name of the town?
Dowagiac.
Dowagiac. Do you like your
Dowagiac?
Dowagiac? Do you like your governor?
She's all right.
All right. What do you call people from Dowagiac? Dowagiacians?
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? I really don't know. Yeah, I guess it would be the logical. We're not,
Yeah. How many people live?
We're only 5,000, so
5,
we just call each other by name.
All right. Where do you shop for your produce?
The supermarket or farm stands and farm markets, which are wonderful. You know,
awesome.
Fruit Belt, it's amazing to be.
Don't forget to mail us some cherries. What's on your mind?
Yeah, there you go. I was I don't know if impressed is the right word, but I liked the fact that Donald Trump did a kind of wide-ranging press conference today. And I happened to be reading a biography of JFK. And I remember back, I mean, I was young, but I remember back when he did press conferences regularly. He had a way with the press that's obviously very different than Trump, but benefited from doing them because the people got to know him. They got his approval ratings went way up, et cetera. What would you think of the fact of Trump doing things like this on a fairly regular basis and maybe bringing in, like he did, various cabinet members or whatever, so that people can get to know them? I feel like he doesn't always give the best answers, but I feel like he's not afraid of just going off the top of his head. And it gives you that, even the answer with the drones, and I think somebody mentioned this also in the comments, that it just was reassuring without him having to say anything, just the fact that he addressed it. So that's basically
great questions. Tricia, go ahead.
Yeah, I think transparency. I mean, it's like the comparison to the drones. People just want to know, and so give them something. And him doing a 90-minute press conference today really gave the people, pulled the curtain back behind what's going on in the transition and what he thinks about the different issues. So I think transparency is always best. I also thought, comparing this to Trump 1.0, during the period when Stephanie Grisham was communications director and press secretary, and they weren't doing those briefings, I thought that was a loss for the American people, because we were completely then just dependent on the media just to tell us what they think is going on, and we couldn't hear directly from the president or his top aides. So I hope he continues to do this.
Kristen.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope he, I assume that they're going to be creative with it too. So it's not just going to be a press conference. He's going to go back on podcasts, and they're going to have those types of folks in the White House press briefing room, which I think is a, you know, historic shift and is going to really change the way our leaders communicate with us. You know, we always talk about fireside chats. This is, you know, the 2025 and onward version of that. And it's so critical. And I think it would be a loss, not only for Trump, but for, you know, the electorate if we didn't have that, because he really is a once in a generation communicator and has been able to really tap into the electorate, hear what, you know, our concerns are. And we all feel like he hears us and he addresses it. And so for them not to capitalize on that over every medium, not just the traditional press conference, which was great today, but Twitter spaces and podcasts and events.
Two-way, say two-way.
Two-way. That,
Yeah.
I think this would be a great platform for the president to come on and really reach voters where they are and get outside that traditional, you know, beltway media box that, you know, leaders have been stuck in for so long. And I think other people will follow him. So you'll see senators start to do the same, and you'll see your congressmen start to do the same, and your governor start to do the same. And I think that can only have, it'll be a challenge for some who aren't as talented as President Trump, but I think it's a good, healthy way for our leaders to communicate with all of us. And it's better for both.
Mhm.
Patty, this is not a joking question. How do you think President Trump would do on two-way?
Oh, I think he would be fantastic. I think he would be just like he was today in this press conference. I think he would treat it like that.
And what would you ask him, Patty, if you were here now?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's a very good question that I'm kind of caught off guard.
You're like a politician. You're like a politician, though, delaying while you think of it by saying very good question.
Excellent.
Exactly. Go ahead.
But I think the border issue is one that I've seen a few people, you know, on the other side already, the level rising, like teachers saying they're going to come after the kids in my class and take them away, et cetera, et cetera. And I think he has done this, from anything that I've read or kept up on, kind of toning down. I think the idea that he's going for people that have been bad people in their own countries and they're here kind of, you know, as a way station, send them back, but make it clear this is for the safety of Americans. I think Homan does a great job of talking about that it's for the safety of children and the future. I think it's just something where the media is going to love, like even Trump brought it up, they're going to love the crying girlfriend of the bad guy, all those kinds of things. The media is, you know, going to want to pick up on that. So I think the more they can keep up on that issue, I think I would just ask him, you know, if he saw things that way and what other things he could do to get it up. And I think Alyssa Slotkin I'd be more for in as a governor. I liked her. I watched her debate. But anyway, that's
okay.
Patty,
go ahead, Tricia.
I have a quick question, Patty. Who is your favorite Trump nominee and your least favorite?
Well, honestly, J.D. Vance, I have been since Obama. I was a Republican for many years. And then since Obama, I've been voting on the Democrat ticket. This year, because I lived in California for so long, I have never been a Kamala fan. I followed her on social media. She was always showing herself getting in a limo or getting off the jet. And I thought, you know, it just was kind of baloney. And I remember her from years ago, and I've never been impressed with her. So I thought, I'm not going to vote at all. And then I decided I have to really look at what is going on, because I'm a city clerk here. I was elected city clerk in my town. So I've been involved with elections, and I've gotten a chance to interact with voters. And I could see I had people coming in when we had early voting. One woman came in, she was in tears. She said, I've got to vote. We've got to have a change. You know, just because financially, this is an economically depressed area and people are really, really hurting it. I almost could feel by the absentee responses. I thought, I know how this election's going to go. I feel like small towns are a microcosm of big cities.
Patty, this is all super interesting. I'm going to bring you back to Tricia's question. Who do you like? Who's a nominee?
Okay, J.D. Vance was the one that really gave me the confidence. I just feel like he is solid.
Okay, and are there any of the cabinet nominees you're less like less than JD?
You know, I didn't like Matt Gaetz, but that just had to do with past media
Yeah.
noise, but there isn't anybody I can think of. I like
Okay.
RFK a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Patty, thanks for
Oh,
coming.
thank you. I'm really honored.
Come back regularly. Honored to
Hey,
have
I
you here.
will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, Chris Williams, come on in. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Oh, hi. Well, just, the one thing that's starting to amaze me a little bit is while I voted for Trump this election, I'm happily surprised that he's handling the press much better. I found myself cringing a lot in the past, even though I believed in his policies, I believed in what he was doing. He seemed to take the fire out of the question sometimes by not reacting. The Kristen Welker one, and then even today, I don't get to see a lot, but those two recently, I felt like he's not reacting. He doesn't seem insecure about things, which is usually what he would indicate. I am a little the one thing and I'm interested in this panel, and what you guys think, but I see a lot of truth coming out when these kind of thin attacks come out against people like RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. They're very those two in particular, I think, are really important because they represent what I consider political diversity within the Trump cabinet. They came from the Democratic side. I didn't agree with everything that RFK talked about, but I agreed with, these are smart, competent, really good people that take their job seriously. So the media and the attacks that they're coming up with, and I know that they have to, but it seems like it's almost exposing them a little bit. The things that they're bringing up against the Pete Hegseth stuff, I feel like, there's a little bit of immaturity associated with him. While I like what he represents in general and what he could do for defense. I worry a little bit about some of the immaturity in his past that is a little too recent, that some people are going to capitalize on. But anyway,
Chris, if you've loved hearing you say all that. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So the question is, do you guys see the same thing with Trump, but more so as far as how you see the future going? I can't wait to see like the first White House briefing. Is he going to be out there again, or is this going to be, I know he's got someone picked, but compared to his first term, it's almost like a complete shift. And I'm asking you a little bit to predict. I'm asking you also to see if you're happy with what he's doing and if you think this is the right path for him.
Yeah. Tricia, go ahead. And then Kristen.
I mean, I think he's still a fighter and doesn't take BS, but I think it's definitely more of a measured approach. And I think some of that comes with him winning by such large margins. I also think, I think getting shot changes a person. And that might be part of what we're seeing. I think it's also legacy building. I think we'll have to, the proof is in the pudding if this is the Trump that's here to stay and the Trump disciplined messaging. I think that the mass deportations, it might be tough. The media is going to really hold on to the sob stories, and there are going to be very sad stories when it gets down to it. So I think that that'll be the real test, not just for Donald Trump, for the entire administration.
Kristen.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I think Trump also has the benefit of having been through this before. He's already kind of addressed mistakes he thinks that they've made back in 2017 and during that first administration. And then he's had the benefit of 4 years after that of the American public saying, wait a second, he was right, they're wrong. So there's a whole, 8 years of lessons and prep that they've been able to do. I also think on the media front, the media is a little bit broken too. And so, yes, during the mass deportations, we're going to have, outrage on all of the mainstream networks. But, what they don't realize is during the campaign, they did that every day. Every time, Trump said something, we spent an entire news cycle focusing on Madison Square Garden or something else. And Americans are just so tired of it. And so I think that it will be extremely beneficial for the president and for surrogates and to not only come out and speak directly to the American people, but then to go and find real American people to use as examples to show the benefits of what they're doing. And they were very effective doing that during the campaign. I suspect that they will do the same during the administration, especially those first 100 days. I anticipate that there'll be lightning speed. They will need to deliver big wins right off the bat. to keep that confidence. And the media will be outraged on some of the things they're going to do. I think that the media is probably in the weakest position it's ever been, because Americans have finally just had enough. They're going to, they're going to hear directly from the president and see that their lives are getting better in the different ways that they were concerned about before this election. And so I'm very optimistic, maybe a little too optimistic, but I'm very optimistic that, that the spin that we'll see over nominees and over, main initiatives that the administration will do will not land, a hit on a Sunday morning show will not land as damaging as it has in the past. Because I think Americans, are kind of over that, and they're diversifying how they get their news and information.
Chris, thank you. Appreciate you coming in and appreciate those answers. All right, let's get David in here. David's slightly to the left of you two. David, thank you for joining. What's on your mind, sir?
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. You're ready to go.
Unmuted and unbowed. No, I was actually, I just wanted to comment on something that happened last week on this platform, which was your guest, Lindy Lee, which was an amazing episode. The reason being that, she comes on and she is the epitome of my least favorite type of Democrat. She's a wealthy donor, friend of donors, DNC honcho, and she believes that the party needs to move to the right. And in fact, she acknowledged that on most issues, she's not even in tune with the Democratic Party, except for guns and climate, and everything else. She's basically, as people said in the chat, she's on her way to the other side. But nevertheless, despite being all these things, I wanted to say, in the spirit of the platform, that she was just dropping truth bombs like the Air Force over a target. It was incredible.
Well, and David, you have at least some areas of commonality with her, because she doesn't like the Democratic Party's trying to stop competition, right? You agree with her in terms of Bernie Sanders and Bobby Kennedy and other efforts to keep the Democratic Party from believing in democracy. So you have that in common.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. But what came through
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
came through to me was not only is she saying negative things about the quality of the campaign, the way Dan Turrentine is saying negative things and acknowledging failures and weaknesses, but she was basically used the word bamboozled, something like that. She was depicting the campaign basically as a scam that used her money and didn't use it well, and perhaps never really intended to use it that well.
Yeah.
She was really suggesting that, what I would say is an insight that, I get from listening to her, which is that, the industry of consultants and strategists is going to go on. And the people who are affected by this election, one way or the other, out there in the country, they're going to suffer one way. I believe they're going to suffer greatly.
Yeah.
From this election, but other people believe they would have suffered greatly from the election of Kamala Harris.
Right. And that's another area.
These people are not going to suffer.
Yeah, that's another area where she agrees with Senator Sanders, and I suspect you, which is that the consultant class is too powerful and makes too many decisions that dictate the conduct of a campaign and the course of a campaign, and maybe even some of the issue positions. So, ladies, the consultant class, I know you don't know anybody in that class, but what do you think of that critique of both parties, which you hear from populists, that the consultant class is not in touch with the real lives of real people?
100%. I think that the consultants and I just think that there's way too much money in politics, and that will probably take me out of a job. But yes, I think that it's not a force for necessarily good, and it's not a force for people really being in touch. Most of these consultants are based out of Washington, D.C., and not where the majority of Americans live. So I'm 100% agree.
And Tricia spends most of her time in Columbus, Ohio, which is not Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Kristen.
I think it's even bigger than consultants, so I won't be too hard on my colleagues, but I think it's the ruling elite is how that's what this entire election, it's the basics of populism. It's what this election was. I mean, you could go back to 2016. Bernie Sanders won that primary. It was it was a manufactured effort from superdelegates and consultants and donors that pushed Hillary Clinton to be the Democrat nominee. And I think you saw the same thing this time when Joe Biden was forced out. And it's not just consultants per se, but I mean, even just look at today, you had, Congresswoman AOC kind of run for one of the top spots in these committees to chair the oversight committee. Now, I think she was doing that to get on TV to go primary Chuck Schumer, but still you see kind of like their younger, more rambunctious member trying to challenge the old guard, and she lost, right? So Congressman Jerry Connolly was able to get the position, and it was really interesting to watch from my perspective, because you're seeing the two divisions of their party go at it over, just a committee position, but still that their institution is intact. I think Republicans wised up to that a lot sooner. We had a similar problem for years where, and frankly, even when President Trump won the first time, there were so many reports of the DC, both Republicans and Democrats, but within our own party that tried to get in his way and hold him back and steer him in a certain direction. And I think that's all blown up for the better on our side right now. That has put, really the electorate in the driver's seat, because that's, the mandate that Trump now has, and he's not beholden to any consultant or donor or anything to that effect. Democrats haven't figured that out yet. And it's broader than just a donor or a consultant. It's also these members who have been in office for so long that are part of it. I mean, how long has Nancy Pelosi been there? I mean, how long has Chuck Schumer been there? These are institutions themselves that, they need to have their own, come to Jesus moment where, okay, maybe what we're doing isn't working. And so it's a broad problem. We figured it out. I'm not to say we will never have that problem again on the Republican side, but we had our own, kind of rebellion against the institution establishment, as they say. And I think Democrats need to go through that same walk in the wilderness.
David, thank you for joining. We love having you here. Grateful to you for being part of Two Way. All right, Jason, come on in. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
Thank you, Mark. Jason Crow from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. So from the home of Rush Limbaugh, I'll just say longtime watcher, first time caller.
Jason, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Homage to the moment. I'll say mega dittos.
There you go. Kristen, I've known you since Roy Blunt's campaign. I served in the Missouri General Assembly. One of the things that I think is going to be fascinating is what effect Donald Trump's second term has on state legislatures, other people. You had data this morning, Mark, on your show that I found fascinating. One of the things that is great, a politician that President Obama was, just destroyed the Democratic Party on the state level. And that's a concern for me, going way back when in 2016, working with Jeff Rowe, endorsing Ted Cruz. We wanted to make sure that, legislators were not wiped out, just having seen the effect that strong state leaders can have then on a national movement. This goes all the way back when Missouri was able to flip from a very, very large Democratic majority to what Missouri looks like now. So, Chris, I didn't know what your thoughts were on that, if anyone else is looking at that as well as we move forward, but that's something I'll at least be watching.
Yeah, no, and it's something that I immediately thought of, just because, I do this for a living to try to get more of those people elected and keep those majorities beyond just this next 4 years. But I mean, Obama, it was a special case. I think that, he had his own data, operation, did not share it with states. They were very insular in what they did. And I think, it was different from the Bush administration before him that really tried to, expand the party down ballot. And it was very surprising to see that Obama really didn't share the wealth, so to speak, in terms of data and just operation. What will be our challenge from here on out, starting with, down ballot races in 25 and 26, is how do we convert someone that only came out to vote for Donald Trump? I mean, we have really shifted. Democrats used to be the party of presidential elections, and we were the off-year party. That's really flipped right now when you go back and look at 22 and 18. And so how do we take someone, and it's not going to be as easy as everyone says it is. We can't just go and knock a bunch of doors and yank them out. We really need to go and reach these people and convince them and make them, lifelong voters. And it's not just a Senate race in a state. It is local down to the city council level. I mean, the first elections that we're going to see post 2024 are going to be the 3 special elections in Virginia on January 7th. And so when you're in Loudoun County, Virginia, how do you find the few thousand people that voted for Trump only to come out and turn out in a special election to help flip that state Senate seat? These are all going to be the test cases. It starts with data, but it also starts with messaging as well. It's not as easy. What people make the mistake all the time of just copying and pasting Trump. No one will ever be him. It can't happen. This is someone that is totally unique to our politics, to our culture, to our party. What we need to do, we need to learn how to take the best messages and the best achievements from Trump and use them, apply them in our own language, in our own districts, in our own towns, and pull people out that way. So it's a long-winded answer, basically because I don't have the right answer to it, but it is going to be a huge effort that we're all going to have to do. And it's not going to be as easy just to say, hey, let's just go knock a bunch of doors and get them out. It really needs to be an investment that is not just from the national level, but in state by state cases to pay attention to those city council races, to pay attention to those special elections, because you need to keep building that bench and those wins and keep refreshing that data and keeping these voters home so that they don't just go disappear because Trump's not on the ballot again.
Tricia, you've done work lots of places, but obviously know plenty about Ohio, which has become redder in the Trump years. And down ballot. I mean, it's almost impregnable for the Democratic Party. No statewides, wiped out lots of places. Is that how much of that is Trump and how much of that is local folks doing it a different way?
Yeah, I think that a big part of it is Trump. But I mean, even in years that Trump was not on the ballot, Republicans still swept in Ohio. So I don't think it's a one-man show necessarily there. But I do think that this demonstrates also the importance of that overhaul at the RNC, but also the need to overhaul a lot of these state parties. Michigan is a perfect example. They were in total disarray, and then they really turned it around. And I think that they have to continue to do that. But I think hopefully we see more of like a Michigan model going forward, because that's what it's going to take. And we like Kristen said, you can't just depend on Donald Trump. This is his last race. So,
and we need to watch what Democrats are doing too. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
If they don't come to meet America where it is, I mean, we need to capitalize on that. So if they continue to be out of touch, and I mean, especially in these next 2 years and going into midterms, which historically should be bad for us. I mean, I don't anticipate Democrats to figure it out that quickly, but we need to make sure that we call them on it to kind of, wait a second, turn out to vote, because Democrats still aren't the party of where you are. Jason,
how'd you find out about two-way?
Just kind of paying attention. Have known you from the circus, and of course follow politics as a has been, never will be. But do appreciate the people you put in front of other people just to have more of a discussion. I think one of the things that made Missouri unique, I mean, Newt Gingrich spent a lot of time in Missouri when Catherine Hanaway was trying to take over the Missouri House. And we had a unique thing from Congressman Dick Armey would come in and say, the reason Republicans can't win is they have nothing and they won't share. So the interesting thing will be what now this victory comes. And Jeff Rowe was there when we took over the Missouri House, and was how do you win races, multiple races with $100,000? Anybody can win one race with $100,000. So, and how do you capitalize on the positives of Trump, not the negatives of Trump? I mean, it was really easy for us to win a race in Missouri by just putting a picture of their candidate, Barack Obama, and Nancy Pelosi on it. And that's really all we had to do. So I'm just curious, do we think that'll happen to Trump? How does that all work out? And I appreciate the dialogue on that, because I think state legislatures are a key.
Yeah,
it really is to the future of the country.
It's an open question, right? Barack Obama didn't do much for the Democratic Party in his first term, and not much in his second. My hunch is that Donald Trump is going to, part of his legacy, he wants it to be not just a growing economy and end the forever wars and increase energy production, but I think he wants a strong Republican Party, and he's hired people who are empowered to do that. So if they set their mind to it, and particularly if the Democrats have trouble recovering, I think you could see another case where a party overperforms what historically they should do in the midterms, and it starts with fundraising, candidate recruitment, but also until the Democrats figure out what they stand for in national security, economics, and social issues, someone like Donald Trump, and if people can't imitate him exactly, but they can ride those coattails, even if he's not on the ballot. So I'll be curious to see how much effort they put in. Jason, thank you for joining. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Come back regularly. Ladies, in conclusion, thank you for joining. Ask you both an exit question in homage to the McLaughlin Group, as we often do. Kristen, leaving aside J.D. Vance, and let's leave aside Vivek Ramaswamy just for the sake of argument. Who's the undersung superstar of the transition so far?
That's a great question. I don't know if I would even say one person, but I do think it's the team preparing these nominees. So, it's Susie Wiles, it's Jason Miller. It is the people that are in the background that are, writing the talking points, that are, planting the articles, that are helping murder board these candidates. I think all the work and, zero praise usually goes to the folks in those positions. And so I'm sure there are a ton of more people that I don't even know their names that are working 24-hour days that are really.
I'll tell you who's excellent in addition to the list you had is the Sherpas, the confirmation Sherpas. I don't know all of them, but the ones I know, they've gotten an all-star team of folks to shepherd these folks too. Trish, I exempted Vivek Ramaswamy just because he's your friend and former boss, but who would you say is the unsung hero of the transition?
Pete Hegseth's guy. I mean, talk about a political resurrection, but I also have to say Susie Wiles. Think about all those Florida folks who are going to be in that cabinet, from Pam Bondi to Rubio. I know I'm missing other people.
Yeah. Florida and New York both are doing very well in the staffing. So grateful to you both. You've both been on separately. Love to have you both on together. Hope you'll come back both separately and together. And if we don't see you before the holidays, grateful to you. And we hope you both have wonderful holidays and Merry Christmas, and come back regularly, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back morning meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow night, this program. Little hint, we're off Friday night, but we'll be here the rest of the week. So enjoy, and thank you for participating, and we'll see you at 9 a.m.